It is not that we must become worthy for this society. We must become worthy for ourselves and relearn our true forms, uninterrupted, so that we may be worthy to assume the throne from which we have found ourselves unperched. Night show. You gonna get this work. Night show. Thanks everybody for stopping through. So if you were following my Instagram vote panel, and a good amount of you were, so I appreciate everybody who voted, or just clicked because you saw it and that made you think about some things. So you're a part of the conversation, whether or not you like it or not. But for those folks who are just tuning in, the vote was whether or not I should put out a small segment, mini part series called "Losing My Religion." So I wanted to kind of go over certain topics as to why, for me, I had to depart from Christianity. So I'll just go over my story. Went to college. In college, studied a lot about history. I was already and always a fan of history. Like, it always intrigued me. And a lot of people were like bored, but like that was the one class in high school, middle school even, that I was super excited about. But it just felt like there were some gaps. And I grew up just being very inquisitive. I was always getting into stuff, trying to figure out how things worked. So I wanted to understand why the world was the way it was and what events led up to it. So with that, definitely became a scavenger of facts. Eventually, within going to college, I would hear whispers of all these great historians, which I've never heard before, like Sheikh Diop, John Henry Clark, just an example for it too. And the information that I would hear about these gentlemen and women who have devoted their lives to understanding history, world history, global history, and from an African and an Aboriginal or Native or First Nation person's point of view, which is something that you rarely see in the educational system in the U.S. It was superiorly enlightening. With Ivan Van Sertim's Sertima, they came before Columbus, and him going to Central America and finding these boats that were the same build, type, shape, design in Western Africa and Egypt. You could see them along the Tigris River and Euphrates, and seeing that specific type that is known to be an African design, and then seeing that same boat, that same shape appearing in South America. It was, that's hard physical evidence, especially the amount that he was finding, not to mention the Olmec statues and faces and this, that, and the other. And that just got me down the history hole. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is really awesome. Like, maybe these African folks were, it was highly possible and likely that, history undocumented of these people, they had circumnavigated the globe. And then you keep going a little further, and then like within that book, and then within it's almost an eyesight, I can't see it right now. It is with the gentleman. Let me see if I can bring it up right now. I know some folks have heard his name before, especially if you're into the podcast scene. Graham Hancock. There we go. Graham Hancock. That's what I was looking up. Graham Hancock. With his books, Magician of the Gods, Fingerprinting the Gods, and you see the rice Pyrrhus map, I think it's called. Let me double check to make sure I don't be out here leading y'all astray. But basically, the map is an older map from a 15th century Ottoman Empire general. He's a geographer. He's that's a general, admiral, master navigator, all this other stuff. So the Pirireus, Pirireis, and his depiction of the maps that, if you have to Google search them. If you Google search some of these maps, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, because it's showing like the southern tips of Antarctica, southern tips of Antarctica. So it's showing the tips of Antarctica, and there are canals, there are rivers, there are what appears to be villages. They're named. So based on what we know about climate history, the last time that Antarctica was ice free and could have been inhabitable was, I think, of the earliest 6,000 years ago. So, and even in his journals and his diaries, he talks about how this is a copy of a much older map. And I say that to say this: you have all these loose connections, but it still points to like this one fact that people whom we don't have that strong of a connection with now had already discovered and traveled and circumnavigated this globe to the point where they understood mathematics to a degree that they could make some of these maps. And in some of these maps and the depictions, they say that from the drawings from Antarctica, the only way that they could have gotten some of the particulars, especially the way the map narrows when it gets to the southern coast of South America, is that if it was taken from an aerial position, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to see how the land mass narrows and widens in certain in particular areas. So it's crazy because that opens up another can of worms. Like, what technology have we lost due to warfare, due to any type of crazy climate change, asteroid impacts, all this type of stuff? What's really out there? There's so much information that's out there. And then from that, when I started to get to the maps and all this other stuff, then I started to study a little bit more of ancient philosophy and ancient spiritual systems. And then that's when that really kind of opened up my even more questioning. And I know for a lot of people of hardline faith, faith without doubt for me is like, I don't know. It's just so blind, just to just not question anything. And I think a lot of religions are doing themselves a disservice if your point is to save humanity and keep them pious, righteous, and all the good stuff. Lying to them or omitting from them is only going to hurt your overall message. So I think there should be more candid conversations where people can still feel as if like they have questions that can't be answered by earthly means. So that's when your faith really should start to kick in. And if you allow that space to exist in these houses of worship, I think that you will find folks coming back to church, or true temple or the mosque or whatever. And I was listening, or rather I was reading this article, or a few articles about women of color and people of color leaving the religions of their colonizers and going back to the practices of the people in which they come from and embracing their culture and being proud of their culture, and the fact that this is like a moment in history where it's really going to be like a huge flux. Like it feels like almost like a new Renaissance period. And with 2020 coming up, I feel like there's going to be this bold boom that happens, and it's going to be a beautiful moment. And I'm here for it. I'll tell you that. I'm very much here for it. But this one article I was reading is from it's broadly through Vice, and it's entitled "The Young Brujas Reclaiming Their Power of Their Ancestors." Long stigmatized by colonizers in the Catholic Church, indigenous forms of spirituality and witchcraft are experiencing a renaissance among Latinx millennials. And I get it. I totally get it. It makes sense. It makes complete sense. Like these young folks, old folks even, they have access to information that has never been accessible to the point that they can instantaneously get affirmative and accurate information on a whim. All they have to do is real quick, and it's there at their fingertips. And that's never existed from our knowledge by today's standards. That's never existed, and it's amazing, man. It's amazing just to see how many people are now shucking off the demonization of certain words, and taking back the power of these words and redefining their reality and loving themselves completely. It's awesome, man. It honestly is awesome. And I think the space gets created when you admit the truth and the history of, and I'll just say for me, since I'm talking about my journey for Christianity, there were too many gods, quotation fingers for those listening. There are too many gods that have December 25th as their birthday. There's too many gods who have died for 3 days and come back. There are too many stories that have, when explained from an African spiritual system's point of view, it's, oh, these aren't real people. These are allegorical stories to define, or at least to give people an idea of how to interact in this physical spiritual realm. And you can go deeper into the astrological implications when it comes to the sun during the winter equinox being low in the sky as if it's dead and it rises again, and all that other stuff, and the crux, the constellation, and how that's the cross, and blah, 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 blah. But like, you can't omit that. Once you start digging deeper into that history, into that understanding, you can't just slide by and pretend like, oh, well, what's an excuse that I've heard somebody said? Oh, that the devil is so manipulative that he knew that Christ would come, so he knew that Christ would come, so he organized and orchestrated all these births to coincide to dissuade you or to test our faiths. And I'm just looking, as a child, I'm like, okay, it seems like you're giving this guy a lot of power, but I thought he was, okay, all right. And then you get deeper into history and you start understanding the certain patterns, especially like with European conquest in Africa and this, that, and the other. And it's just like, well, if I'm following this line pattern of thought, like if rock and roll was originally a black music style and it's gone, and country music was originally a black music style, it's now gone, and you're starting to see it happen in rap right now. And even David Banner himself said that if you don't watch out, you're going to see the face of what is rap hip-hop music completely change, and it will no longer be black music, just like with blues, just like with jazz, just like with rock. And at some point it just kind of clicked to me. It's like, you think that your music's the only thing that was taken from you? Don't you think maybe your spiritual system was copy and pasted and bastardized? And then you start digging and you find out about the Council of Nicaea and how when the Greco-Roman period began in Kemet, Egypt, how the deity, quotation fingers again, Serapis, however you want to say it, becomes this godhead that the Greco-Romans wanted to impose upon the people of Kemet as if he was a living, breathing god. And for them, their gods were a reflection of nature in themselves. So you couldn't really take a living man and make him into a godhead without really trying to like incorporate him into this mono but polytheistic, pluralistic spiritual system. So much to the point where Serapis kills or destroys, not Serapis, Greco-Roman period, the temples of the god Osiris, as the Greeks would call him, were destroyed, and pictographs of the African mother, the feminine, the divine feminine, Isis or Auset, as spoken in Kemet, Auset was then married off to this Serapis character. And the black masculine figurehead is then destroyed and replaced. And there was still too much continuity between the people, the land that was theirs, and their history. So that it never went down. But in Europe, away from all of this, Serapis eventually turns into this Christ figure and then literally becomes Jesus. So it's the robbing of a spiritual system that I couldn't really get down with anymore. It's like I can't omit these facts. And I urge everyone to look it up and dig into it and check it out for themselves. But I feel like even if they don't have the same passion and intent, just having that information in your back pocket, even though like I'm doing a poor job of passing it to you right now, I think for some folks this would be a good start for them to just kind of understand why folks are leaving and doing this whole woke thing, I guess. Quotation fingers for those for those listening again. I mean, really, we're just trying to uplift the consciousness of the people, just trying to make them reclaim their own divinity. They acting up. Reclaim their own divinity and really just be their own saviors, because no one's coming for us. No one's coming to get that job for you. No one's coming to save you from your situation. God, the divine, the source, however you want to have that mascot for divinity represent themselves in your life, has given us all the tools necessary to defeat yourself and become your best self. So I challenge all of you, including myself, as you may not see it, but I'm freaking out right now, doing this whole little monologue right now. And a couple notes in front of me, but this is the part one of this. So it's a beautiful thing, I think. I think that it just expressing it kind of gives folks a little bit more comfortability just to go out there and do it. And this is a touchy subject, so I expect the shenanigans to ensue. But I'm here for it, and I'm here for y'all. And I hope y'all have a great Sunday. God bless y'all real good. Night, y'all. You gonna get this work. Night, y'all.